Hello and welcome back to another Mindustry gameplay guide video. This is part two of this series, and today we're going to be talking about really just second, third, and fourth hex, and just early game in general. Sometimes not fourth, but just early game in general, and what to do once you're out of first hex. So right now I'm still in the same pause play eviction training map made by Proton. So I'm able to pause the game and unpause it however I like. The only big thing about that is that it won't be a perfect analog of a game, and there's no way to run any sort of slash time function. So I can't actually show you how many minutes into the game we are, but the build and everything all works the same. So to start off, I'm going to speed through most of first hex. There's only one thing that you really need to worry about here that I haven't discussed in the first video. I'm just going to speed through the first hex till we get to that point now. Okay, so here we are at the point where the only point where you really have to worry about what to do after being in while you're in first hex. And this is when you're setting your daggers to rally somewhere. So there are two ways to sort of play. You can either play economically or aggressively. Playing aggressively would mean taking the shortest path to your opponent, basically pretty much every game. So for example, if my opponent spawned in this corner, I would almost always take one of these two cores. Or if they spawned up here, I'd take probably this one. Taking cores economically is a lot more complicated. Basically, the general idea is that you want to take a core which has at least 2 air blasts of coal, an air blast of titanium, and there's some other nice things that you can have in a hex, but that's really the only two big things. And the really important thing is you want them to be quite close together, because generally when you're going for an economic build, you're going for a dome rush. So for example, it has a coal patch, which can fit an air blast drill. It can actually fit 2. An air blast drill, a titan drill, and another air blast drill. Thorium up here is nice, but not required. Water is also quite important. But there's one more thing that's very important. You need to have at least 3 water for those 3 things, but it's not necessarily... It's not fully necessary, but it's kind of a big hit if you can't get that. But that's what you're looking for in a good second hex. The only other thing that you're looking for is that you want your second hex to be next to a hex, or not next to, but you want, once you've taken your second hex, you want to be able to take a hex with at least 2 tiles of oil. 1 is also possible to play, but it's a lot worse. So for example here, I've seen that I have oil here, so I can pick whatever hex I like because that's directly next to my starting core, so I'll always be able to take that. I wouldn't take that as my second hex because the oil is so close to the core. Generally, you don't actually want to look for oil in your second hex, but you want your second hex to have 2 air blasts of titanium. Sorry, 1 air blast of titanium, 2 air blasts of coal. And you want your third hex. You want to take your second hex such that you can get a third hex that has 2 oil, or maybe 1 oil is bad and you can use a rotary pump instead, but it's not great. Generally, you just want to find a hex with 2 oil. Sometimes you can't, and if you can't, then that's not the end of the world, but yeah. So in this game, I'm going to take this hex. This hex would also be suitable because it has coal, titanium. With thorium, it's pretty much the exact same. But in this game, I'm going to take this hex. I'm just going to set my dagger rally point to right there in the corner. And you always want to put it in the corner because it can shoot through the mender and take out the mender on the way to the core. Anyway, I'm going to keep speeding it up, finish up first hex here, and then get back to you. And so here we are, just taking the second hex. I lost all of my daggers to that hex explosion, I think, which is really quite unfortunate. That's normally a very bad thing, because your second hex gets taken slower, but it doesn't really matter so much. So basically, when you enter this second hex, provided you've done the build in the first hex the same way that I do, that means that you have a lot of silicon and not much graphite or titanium. I actually have a lot of titanium compared to what I normally have at this point in the game, but I'm actually not sure why that is. I might have just built it slightly faster or slightly closer to the core. What's most important here, or I might have been a bit slow because of the water extractor that I had to put on the 6 silicon. What's most important here is that you look up the top. Normally, your graphite will be lower than your titanium will be lower than your graphite. So you normally want to build titanium as your very next air blast, but graphite also is fine. It doesn't really matter what order you build those two in, as long as you build graphite and titanium at the exact same, basically the exact same time in this next hex. So I'm going to unpause the video, and we're just going to pull the stuff up here, and just pull this up, and grab a air blast drill on titanium and an air blast drill on graphite. And that will get us all of the graphite and titanium that we need for the next little while. It's actually a lot of graphite and titanium. So I'm going to send my daggers right now to take this next hex. And after you've done that, you have a lot of different options of where to go. Generally, I find it best to build silicon now and then polys. But this is sort of the point where you can start to branch off. You have a lot of builds where you go immediately for a 7 flare. You have a lot of builds where you go immediately for a 2 Atrax. You have a lot of builds where you immediately go for polys, and I like that the most, personally. You also have... There are a couple of other builds that people do, but I don't think that they're as strong. I think I've seen some dagger builds and stuff like that. This is alright, just because it gives you such a versatile army. But in general, whatever you're doing, you probably need more silicon. And you probably need more graphite, thorium, and that sort of thing. The general rule for early game is if you're going to play aggressively, then you need about 1 extra silicon and 1 extra graphite per tier 2 factory. A little bit less silicon, but good enough. And if you're going to go for tier 3, you need to build a thorium drill and more silicon, obviously, and then you start unloading. But that's quite a lot more difficult. Generally, I would say that by far the strongest strategy, especially in free-for-all, is going to be an economy build, which will mean going for a poly schematic like this one. So that's what I'm going to do here. Flare builds are also good and stuff like that, but they're not as strong as just going for more economy. So I'm going to start doing that here, and we're just going to put down silicon and then polys. It's as a general rule, you should probably, before you build any unload silicon, any unload silicon past first hex, past these tier 1, you want at least 1 more 6 silicon. So I'm going to go ahead and do that straight away. Just set this up here. Just like so. And I'm out of copper and lead, which is normal because I'm playing very fast. But the general idea is that you probably want silicon now, and then you want some form of unit. I'm going to go with polys, but flares, something like that, all work too. You just want things to come down at around this time. The only real thing... Oh, I'm accidentally mining some scrap there. The only real thing you need to be super duper concerned about here is running completely dead on something to the point where you can't build anymore. In the early game, generally, you can run out of something, and you very often will run out of something. Like you're seeing, I'm running copper and lead very, very low all of the time. and same with silicon and graphite and just everything really. You generally are aware that you're going to be low on things, and also power. Like here, I'm already at 19k power out of 58k. You're going to be very low on things, but if you run out, it doesn't really stall your building so much. It just takes a couple of extra seconds. So you can build really whatever you want past this point, as long as you're not unloading too much. It's only the unloaders that you have to be super careful about. There are a lot of builds that are faster than others. Like, for example, you wouldn't want to go into this second hex and build a titanium drill, a graphite drill, another titanium drill, another graphite drill, and then another graphite drill, because you're going to run out of silicon and you're going to run out of a bunch of things, and you're going to end up with tons of graphite, tons of titanium, and almost none of the other resources that matter. So you want to try to keep everything balanced, and having a good build order for this bit of the game is really, really helpful, and I'll give some examples of that in the next video probably, or some time down the line. But just as a general principle, which is all that we're talking about here, just general principles, going for this sort of graphite, titanium, and silicon, and some sort of unit is a very strong way to get into your second hex. And in general, in early game, it's not so punishing compared to making economy mistakes is not so punishing compared mostly to mid game and late game when you're really slapping out a lot of unload schematics. So we're just going to sit around in first hex because these daggers are going to take a little while to go into second hex. With the pause play, I've been playing very quickly, and also losing all of the daggers was very unfortunate. One thing that you can do right now is go and finish up that diff gen. You're always intending on finishing this differential generator at some point, but it doesn't really matter when, as long as your power doesn't go out. That's another thing, your power can go out in the early game, and it's quite a problem. We're just going to take this second hex, and we're going to speed up. I'm just going to place a couple of scatters while I wait for the second hex to get taken. Okay, and there we go. We have second hex. And now from this point on, it basically doesn't matter where you put your daggers which hexes you put your daggers to take. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very greedy economy build now, and I'm just going to make plastane. And I'm going to make surge. So this is a dome rush build order, basically. I'm just going to build both of these right now, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to be aware of a couple of things. Firstly, when you're building surge and teching up this fast, surge and plastanium, your power is likely to go out, which it is going very slowly. You can see negative 155 per second. You also need to be aware of all of the different resources, not just waiting for the surge and plastanium. So the surge is going to unload quite a lot of silicon, which is your first big problem. You need to either get some silicon up or get your dome up fast enough that you don't fully run out your bank of silicon. You're not actually going to be negative, but you're going to be running on a couple of things positive, which is when you're counting in building, you're going to start going negative. And the other thing is that when you build your next 2 differential generator, you really don't want to run out of metaglass. And I've had that happen to me many, many times. When you try to slap down the 2 differential generator on the poly, or your next 2 differential generator, you don't have any metaglass, and you end up stalling for ages, and then your power might crash, and a lot of bad things happen. You can see here that I'm very much overfilling this pyrotype mixer. That is for a reason. Basically, the reason there is that I'm not 100% sure, say for this coal patch, I'm not sure if this coal patch is going to get put under the dome. So right now, if I put my dome here, it obviously will be, but maybe I'll want to put it down here or something, or out here. And if I end up wanting to put it out here, I don't know why I would, maybe to get that lead for Metaglass, but if I end up putting it out here, I'm going to need some more stuff. So it's just a good habit to get into when you're playing a Dome Rush. You should probably watch this, overfill this Pyrotype mixer a bit. Anyway, that's going to be more power setup. I'm just going to put all of it in. And now from this point onwards, you have really one more resource that you need to make to be able to make the Dome Rush work, and that is just thorium. So I'm just going to set up that thorium right now. And I'm actually going to do a trick here, where I plug two different, it's a well-known trick, but I'm going to plug two different belts into the bridge end here. And basically what that lets me do, because the bridge end unloads everything instantly, it's going to be able to handle basically double the throughput of the two bridges here. Now, the reason that we build Plastanium and Surge at about the same time is because they, one Plastanium and two Surge at about the same time, is because they both produce pretty much the exact same speed relative to how much you need for a dome. So you need 80 Plastanium for a dome and 120 Surge for a dome. So you can see here I've got a little bit of extra Surge. And what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to place down this dome right now, just a little bit before I have enough. And you can see I was pretty much dead out when I did have Plastanium when I finished it. So the dome is down, and that's basically the marking point of endgame being over, and you're starting to transition into midgame. I hope this video was helpful to people. There are obviously a lot of other ways to play. Like, I know a really common way of playing is to build a 7 flare and then build like a tiny amount of polys and then just rush straight into a Zenith factory. It's effective, but it's not. I've found that it can be countered, and it's not great against players who really know what they're doing. Generally, doing some form of economic build will always be better in mindustry than doing a rush. The only exception to that is fistfights. If you're within a couple of hexes of your opponent, you definitely want to be doing some form of aggressive opener. I wouldn't say it's this. I would say that it's this. This is a Atrax and 3 flare. And yeah, I hope that this was helpful to people. If you're in a fist fight, maybe go for this schematic. And in general, just go for this economic build. You'll be able to get a dome up pretty fast, and this will run everything under. You need to be very careful to try to fit everything underneath this dome, by the way. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.